Let's segue into talking about imposter syndrome. And so I'd love to hear you define it, just in your own way, and then how you navigate your way through it when it comes up.
For me, just thinking back to the academy, one of the things that they always told us going in is like, okay, you want to just stay under the radar, just blend, don't stand out. And it took me years to realize that there is absolutely no way that I could stay under the radar.
Yeah.
There's not enough other people around that look like me for me to even begin to blend. And there were 3 total women in my academy. It had been 4 years since my department had hired a woman. And so, of course, everybody that comes down to the tower, they're going to be asking, how are the women doing? Once those crews go back to the line's going to be asking them, how are the women doing? Asking my academy classmates. And it took a long time for me to realize that I was holding myself back because I was trying to just blend in. I would still work hard, but I didn't want to be in the spotlight. But there's no way to avoid it being us. So we might as well just be the best that we possibly can be. There also seemed to be a lot of well-meaning advice. People were saying that, you really want to do things the right way, 10 years as firefighter, 10 years as engineer, 10 years as captain. Okay, yeah, that sounds like a good plan. And then later I noticed that some of those folks were the first ones to promote after 5 years. Oh, did you just want less competition? What are you telling me that?
Yes.
I don't know, this is probably cultural too, but just being uncomfortable receiving praise. And I think that also holds us back as well. So when I was applying for the team manager position with the task force, I got letters of recommendation from my chiefs, and I could barely read them because it just felt like they were so positive, giving a lot of praise and encouragement my way, and I was just really uncomfortable with because it felt too much. It felt like they were lying. But then when I did go through and read the letters, it was all things that I had done in my career, but I was still uncomfortable with having that put out there. And so it's taken a long time, but now just knowing the best thing that we can do for both our department, for our communities, and ourselves is to be the best version of ourselves that we possibly can. And no matter what we do, somebody's gonna find fault with it. So we might as well just be true to ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And just let that inner light shine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good.
I actually want to piggyback off of what you said about receiving praise. That was something that was very uncomfortable for me, especially in academy and throughout probation. It's like, oh, you're doing well. And then in my mind, I'm like, am I really though? Oh, you're doing great. Keep up the good work. I think that I could probably do better, Not in a way like it's motivating as well, but also it's like, it's that inner struggle,
Yeah, my wife works in the tech industry, and they were doing some research trying to figure out why they weren't getting as many women applicants as men. And they found out that generally women will apply when they're 100% qualified for a job, whereas guys will generally apply when they're 60% qualified. And so they were throwing all of these desired qualifications out there as minimum qualifications. So the women weren't applying. And I think also as women, especially in non-traditional fields, we know that we're going to face a lot of additional scrutiny. So it feels like we have to be dialed in what we're doing. Whereas the guys hey, we'll just throw our hat in the ring and see what happens. And so I think there's got to be a happy middle ground between the A++ and the D-.
Yeah.
We're going to find a middle and then just say, this is where I'm at right now. I'm going to keep improving, but I'm going to throw my hat in the ring and go for it just like everybody else.
It is true. I think for me, I've done a lot of, work just with therapy, being a therapist, a former therapist. I understand the value of it, right? And what I know is that we all have a story that really makes us who we are. And for me, that story is that I'm not good enough. And so for a really long time, I would say that everything that I've done was to prove that I really am good enough, right? I started out as a firefighter at 36. My goal was always to make it to the engineer's rank, stay there for a little bit, and then promote until the point that I became a battalion chief and retire. I've worked and promoted every rank, but I've also invested a lot of time in studying, right, and becoming a specialist in hazmat and rescue and doing everything to try to just really demonstrate that I'm good enough. And so it didn't matter. What I learned is that it didn't matter whether I was number 1 or number 2 on every promotional, and I've promoted 8 times, and I have been number 1 or number 2 on every, and competing with, 200 people at times for the same position. It didn't matter. I've had people say to me, you're going to get promoted. And I remember this one conversation with a person specifically. When I took the lieutenant's test, I was number 1 on that list. And he said to me, you're going to get promoted because you're a woman. And I'm going to get promoted because I'm half Black, half German. And I said, I think I'm going to get promoted because I was number 1 on the list. And so I've demonstrated that I've invested the time to prepare for this, right? But those are conversations that are had that kind of reinforce your story if you don't do the work to realize that at some point you've already proven yourself, right? It took several years. I became a battalion chief and I'm sitting in the seat. And I have to say, it takes a lot of courage to put yourself in a position where everybody is looking at you. Some people supporting you and wanting you to be successful, and some people not so much. And so you're putting yourself in positions that as you climb up the rank in which you're more responsible. Like you mentioned something about your job and making sure that you know where all of your brothers and sisters are. As an incident commander, that is your number 1 responsibility. As the fire chief of this organization, my number 1 responsibility is to make sure that the members of my organization are safe, right? So it's something that I've taken on, but when I got to the rank of battalion chief, I realized that thought process was no longer serving me in my life because it starts to affect you in different ways. So it was affecting me, my health, physically, because I just felt I wasn't good enough. And so I put a lot of time and energy into trying to prove that to people. So that's how it manifested for me. But I have to say, I wouldn't take anything away from that because it just better prepared me for the position that I am in now. I just see things differently now. I don't need to prove myself to anyone but myself at this point because everything that I've done has prepared me to be in this position. So, I think that's part of growing up to some degree and really sitting down, self-reflecting, and understanding who you are as a person. So as you mentioned, you've come into yourself. I feel in a lot of ways I have as well. Who I was when I worked in Oakland is very different than who I am today working in Fremont. They get to see a part of me that members of Oakland never got to see unless you were my friend. I think it's just a part of growing up.
Did you feel in getting the job and in promoting that you lost friends? Like people weren't happy to see you?
Absolutely. You're always going to lose friends because, much like you, I was discouraged from promoting, by someone I thought was my friend. With that same mindset, you're promoting too quickly. Well, for me, I thought that it was important for me to go a certain route. First of all, I was 36, so I didn't have time to waste. And also, as women, we know that most of us don't get to a service retirement. Many of us get hurt in the process. And so I've always been very analytical and very calculated in how I move in the world. And so I knew that I wanted to promote. But I also wanted to be able to have some credibility. And for me, it was important to work every rank. And that was the road that I was going. So when I took the engineer's exam, I did that for a little bit. And then I also competed for the lieutenant's exam. And I was told by someone, you're promoting too quickly. You should spend 10 years as a firefighter. And I was like, I don't have time for that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't. Because that wasn't my plan. You can choose to stay in the rank as a firefighter for 10 years. But, at some point, I want to be able to impact some organizational change and you can't do it from a firefighter, you know what I mean, position globally. There's some things you can do in that rank, but that was the goal that I wanted. And so I wasn't gonna let anyone stop me. And so yes, I've lost a lot of friends. And it's unfortunate because, you know, they feel like you're competing against them. For me, I was only competing against myself. I wanted to be able to perform well enough to be top 5, because in my previous organization, if you made top 5, the likelihood of you getting promoted was high. And so that was always my goal. So I always over-prepared, and it served me. Now I'm in a different place where, you know, I continue to do the work, but I feel like I'm good enough, you know, and I'm okay with that. I'm proud of that. I feel like I don't need to live my life that way anymore. That's what my therapist says. It's not serving you anymore. You know, thinking that you're not good enough. And whenever that comes up for me, I realize where it's coming from, right? It's just something that happened to little Zoraida, and here I am as an adult. And so I have to acknowledge that in order to continue to grow.
And I think that's very important too, to have a game plan and an end game in mind, because it's so easy to get, for lack of a better word, stuck in a comfortable spot.
Complacent.
Yeah, because I've had some stations where I've been so incredibly happy. They ended up cutting the 5th person from the truck, the firefighter spot. If they hadn't done that, I might still be there today, just because I was so happy with that crew. But ultimately, in the long run, getting out of that station is what allowed me to pursue becoming a captain. And so I think it's really important, especially for newer folks, to know where you want to be in the department by the time that you retire, and then have a game plan. Like, okay, I'm going to spend this amount of time in this rank, this amount of time in this rank, knowing how often the promotional lists are offered. Because some departments, especially some of the smaller ones, it could be years before spots open up. So just being prepared for when that opportunity comes.
Yeah, I think that's important. I mean, every probationary firefighter that I had, I would always encourage them, take the classes as soon as you get off probation, because you don't want to be scrambling later, right? Once you decide, oh, I want to take the test, now you have to get 10 to 12 classes. Just take them as soon as you can, so that when the time comes and you compete, you don't have to take the job if you make the list and they offer it to you, but you're in a better position, you know?
Yeah, and when I took the captain's test, I was taking it just to see it, but that process was 3 years. So at the end of that 3 years, I really wanted to get promoted.
Exactly, exactly. Timing is everything, and things shift in life.